Hey, everybody. Buenas noches, buenas tardes, buenos dias, depending where you happen to be watching this from. Yeah, let me know, y'all, if the microphone is acting crazy, but I think it is behaving as it is supposed to. Let me know if you cannot hear me, and I'll see if I can fix that. Hello to everybody that's here watching live, either on YouTube or on Facebook. Um, as you know from the title, tonight we are going to be talking about travel confidence, specifically for Black women. Um, if you are new here, hello, welcome to the party. Glad you're here. My name is Adelia Borashade, and most people out here know me as Picky Girl Travels the World. I have been traveling solo, like intentionally, not like work-related stuff, for about 10 years. I have been living abroad for about 6.5 years. I am the founder of a Facebook group that is a network, a solo travel network specifically for Black women called Picky Girls Travel Solo. Um, and I just want to welcome you to the channel tonight. Typically on this channel, we talk about travel, we talk about living abroad, and we talk about money, because without the money, you can't do the other two. So if any of those are topics that you are interested in, you are in the right place. Be sure to subscribe, hit the like button so that other folks can those of you who are watching, hit the like button if you like this video. If you're watching and this sounds like the kind of place you want to hang out on a regular basis, be sure to subscribe. Um, all right, I see. I love Auntie Trey came in tonight and was like, "Hey, Picky Girl Nation," and I like that. I think we're gonna use that. You know, Stephanie Perry has the Vacarians. I think we're gonna have the Picky Girl Nation. I like that. How are y'all doing tonight? I am hoping, hey, Malika, I'm hoping that we have some people here who maybe are inexperienced travelers or who have not made their first solo trip. You know, that I'm hoping there are some of those people here tonight, and um, that they are willing to speak up, because this video is really for them. Um, as somebody who has a Facebook group, and I forgot to give y'all the link to the Facebook group. It is in the description, but look at me being on top of things. I actually made a banner. If you go pickygirltravelstheworld.com/community will take you to the Facebook group, so you can join up. Um, it is a place meant for newbies, experienced solo travelers, people who have questions. Maybe the folks in your circle won't handle it well if you're sharing your adventures on your timeline. Well, you can come share them with us. So yeah, how do I turn that off? Okay. So I am hoping that there are some new folks in watching this in the chat and will be willing to let us help them find that confidence to travel solo. I see several comments about the earrings. These are my Tabitha Brown earrings. She has the same pair. So I be feeling important and like I'm doing something, because if Av can wear them, I can wear 'em. All right, so Shauna, you are going to be making your first solo digital nomad trip to Puerto Vallarta in 10 days. How are you feeling about that? Are you feeling confident? Do you have questions? Are there things like concerns? Let us know because hopefully we can help you with that. Um, if Again, those of you who aren't the most experienced travelers, those of you who are still trying to figure out how to get the confidence to travel on your own, if you've got questions, you've got concerns, please drop them in the chat because you are going to help us help you. Nervous and excited. What Excited, that goes without saying, but are there specific things that you are nervous about? Um, if so, let us know. Uh, One of the things before we get started up in here, um, I posted, y'all saw over the weekend. No, it wasn't the weekend. It was yesterday. Y'all know time don't mean nothing to me anymore. I posted the links for several upcoming lives. There's going to be lots of lives this week. We're live today, Wednesday. We will be live Friday with Ebony, who moved to Zurich, Switzerland. So if Europe is on your list, you're considering life there, you'll want to be here Friday. And then on Sunday afternoon, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to do some creative co-working. Um, and so if there is some creative activity, whatever it is, something that brings you joy, and you want to hang out with us while you do that, join us Sunday afternoon. But the reason I'm telling this story is I posted all of those things. And someone, I'm not going to mention their name, and they probably won't see this because I've since blocked them, but they posted, "Oh, why does it have to be travel confidence for Black women? How would you feel if blah, blah, blah?" Y'all know how that goes. Um, and I think if in the year 2023, you are asking yourself why I am doing this video specifically for Black women, you are really out of touch. Um, so I just want to double down on the fact that we are specifically tonight going to be talking about traveling alone as a Black woman and what that is like, and the good, the bad, everything in between. So, okay, I see there's some doubts about, but y'all aren't giving me specific things. Okay, Quinn is. I have an irrational fear of not knowing the language where I am going. I don't know that that's an irrational fear. I mean, my very first like trip that I took by myself that wasn't a work related trip was to China. Um, I did not know any, did I know? I didn't know any Mandarin when I went. And I don't think, Quinn, I don't think your fear is irrational. So I don't think, because do you know another language? I mean, but just because you don't know the other language doesn't mean you can't communicate. That is one thing I learned. Uh, I have I went to China twice before I ended up living there for a year and a half. And by my second visit to China, I had three words of Mandarin. I knew how to say hello, I knew how to say thank you, and I knew how to say, I do not want that. Because as a picky eater, I felt like that was an important thing to be able to say. After living there for a year and a half, I now know four words of Mandarin. However, that doesn't mean that I couldn't communicate. I have lived in four different countries, two of which I didn't really speak the language. Um, and I have traveled to a bunch of countries where I didn't speak the language. Just because you don't speak it doesn't mean you can't communicate, because there is a lot that you can do with what do you call it? I was about to say body talk, but that's not the right word. Body language. There are lots of expressions you can make on your face. I was notorious for taking pictures of the things that I wanted and holding up my phone and pointing to it and then be like, I want that and I want two of those. So I don't think your fear is irrational, but I also think just because you can't speak the language doesn't mean you can't communicate. Malika says, I travel solo, but honestly, it still gives me anxiety, especially when I travel to non-English speaking countries. Um, I will say, I have been living on and off in Latin America for five, no, 4 years, 5 years. I don't know. Y'all know math is not my strong suit, but some years. And I would never go out on a limb and say that I speak Spanish, but I have some. And not too a year ago, I was in Europe. I was in Italy, and I'm so used to having some words. And then here I was in a country where I didn't really know any. The only word I think I knew was thank you. So I get having the anxiety, but as long as it's a country where people like, if you can master hello, thank you, and either like I want or I need, I think you can get by a lot of places. The only place I have ever been where the people were unhelpful as they watched me struggle with the language was China. Every other place, if I didn't whip out my phone to pull up a translator app, somebody in that country did. Like they would see me struggle and then they'd pull out their phone and they would put something in and then hold it up and play it for me. So no, I get that. So if anybody else has been able to overcome that anxiety of not speaking the language, drop a comment in the chat. Okay, Sharon Coleman, I'm traveling to Grenada in 2 weeks. I traveled a lot, but this is my first time solo traveling out of the country, staying for 30 days, mostly worried about the Airbnbs I booked, that they might not be what you expected. I you know what? A lot of people get anxious about traveling solo, and I look at it the flip side of it. How much of your life, your everyday life, do you do by yourself? You know, like you go to the store by yourself, you run errands, you do all kinds of things. I think travel works the same way. If you worked your process, you looked at the reviews, you've looked at the pictures, you've done your due diligence. If the Airbnbs don't turn out to be great, make sure you hit up that Airbnb helpline and maybe have a backup plan. Hoping it's clean and safe and near stuff. Did you check like Google Maps? Because I like to do that. Even before I book an Airbnb, and they send you the actual address, I look at the location that Airbnb publishes, and I'll look for the major cross streets, or like in the description, they might tell you, oh, it's a 3-minute walk from such and such grocery store, that kind of thing. I will try my best to locate it on Google Maps and kind of see, do I like this area? What's it looking like? That sort of thing. But I get it. Prior to traveling solo, did you travel in a group setting? When were you comfortable traveling by yourself? And do you have any hesitation when traveling to certain places as a solo traveler? Excellent questions, F Doctor. Um, Prior to traveling solo, I mostly traveled with my family. There may have been, yeah, or with a friend. Um, and it's mostly because I didn't I didn't realize solo travel was a thing, because most of the travel deals I would see would be for double occupancy. So I didn't want to pay a single supplement. So I was like, oh, I can't go on this trip unless I can find somebody to go with me. I did not intend to go to Beijing by myself. I was supposed to go with a friend. They had to work. I went anyway, and it was part of a tour. So I wasn't completely on my own, but even if I was, I think I still would have gone because I I got to be like hospitalized not to go on a trip that I've paid for. Um, and so going as part of a group trip and not speaking Mandarin made it slightly better, but in that trip, we had a lot of free time. So, like I hopped on the subway. Um, I'm not sure why I went to Walmart, but I figured out, I did all these Googles to figure out how to take the metro to Walmart, or what have you. So I didn't, before I started traveling by myself, basically it was I would find a friend and we would go together. And I guess I didn't know, like, you could book your own hotel, your own flight separate from a deal. Once I figured that out, I was gone. Um, and so, after that first trip to China, and I realized that, oh, you can just book your own flight, book your own hotel. Like, you don't need to always buy something packaged. From then on out, it was like it was actually very freeing and liberating because I didn't have to try and work with other people's schedules. Um, do I have any hesitation when traveling to certain places as a solo traveler? I'm trying to think if there is any place that I would not go by myself. Like, for those of you that are from, most of y'all know about the Exodus Summit trip to Morocco. And Stephanie Perry, one of the founders of Exodus Summit, readily admits that the reason the meetup is in Morocco is because she didn't want to go by herself. It is a country that has a reputation of not being an easy place for female solo travelers. Um, Maybe it's because I have lived in Kuwait. That I went to Morocco last April, as a matter of fact. There was nothing I experienced there that, like, made me leery. Might have been because I was there during Ramadan and people were on their best behavior. I don't know. But I will say there, okay, not that I wouldn't go because I'm like afraid to go by myself. It's just the logistics part of it. Haiti. I'd like to go to Haiti. I don't speak uh, Haitian. I don't speak. I have very, very little French. It all left my brain, even though that's what I took in high school and college. Um, and it's a place where I would imagine a lot like Cuba, where you can't like just Google your way as you go. So it's not that I wouldn't go by myself, but I would definitely have to have somebody on the ground handling logistics for me. Um, Global Granny, you're right. And that's why we're having this conversation tonight, because I don't want those ladies to be afraid. I want them out. If they want to travel internationally, I want them out here doing that. If they want to just travel stateside, I want them to do that. I don't care where they travel. I just want them to travel. Okay. Hey, let me tell you something. In my experience, and I have been in some really, really small town parts of Mexico, if you are trying, people are more than willing to pantomime with you to figure out what it is you're trying to say with your Spanish. That's really been my experience in much of Latin America. I will say that in countries that have Spanish speaking countries that have people who look like me, I think they expect my Spanish to be better than it is. And then when I'm like, ¿qué? ¿Cómo? and I don't, it's like, "Oh, you're a foreigner," but then everybody's chill about it. Okay, Kat is heading to Mexico City in 3 weeks, going to be at an Airbnb, nervous about finding rentals. I don't wanna get scammed because I don't know the language. And see, I personally don't think the scamming and the lack of Spanish, I don't think those 2 things actually go together. 'Cause they be scamming people in English as well. There are a couple of videos on this channel, dealing with looking for apartments, where we talk about that, but I would say it's a lot like things that would seem scammy in the US that would work the same way here. Um, so and hey, find you a Mexican friend. Find you somebody to, as you're looking for your longer term rental, find someone who speaks Spanish that will send the text message for you or make the phone call for you. When I first moved here from Honduras, there was a lady who was just like, wow, I'm from Honduras. And so she kind of just took me under her wing. And so that's what she used to do for me because I really had no Spanish then. I would send her the thing, and she would either call or text and find out whether or not, it was something worth my time. Okay, let's see. So with Google Translate, you can enter things you anticipate asking regularly and save them in the app for quick reference when you need them. Um, I don't think I knew that. So thanks, Dee, for letting us know. Um, y'all do know that you can download the Google, not download, what's the word I want? On Google Translate, you have the ability to like not just use it where there is internet, you can download it so you can use it offline, but I didn't know about this. That's very handy. And y'all also know with Google Translate, you can take pictures of things and it will translate them. If it wasn't for that feature, I would not have survived in China. Adrian, I think people confuse language with communication. 80% of how we communicate is body language. Absolutely. Once I figured that out, I really I have no I can't think of any place that I have trepidation about visiting because I don't speak the language. Like that's a minor thing to me because if I got to pull out a pen and paper and sketch it out for you, you going to figure out what I'm trying to tell you. Okay. Oh, Granny says she's got survival Spanish. I used to say I have toddler Spanish. Like that when I speak, I sound a lot like a 3 or a 4-year-old. Grocery store Spanish is where I started because as a picky eater, it's very important for me to know the names of foods that I don't eat. So that's where I started. After living in Honduras for a year, that's all I had. All right, Abba. I was gripped with fright when I realized my Spanish lessons were totally inadequate. Thankfully, it hasn't been a problem. Really, until you are forced to use whatever language skills you have, um, it's that act of using them and being in the moment that's really going to help you get going. Oops, my computer's being glitchy. Italian and Spanish are so similar. Um, I thought this was me being lazy. I was like, oh, Italian is because when I had been to Italy the first time, I had taken a group of students, and one of the kids was fluent in Spanish. And so we leaned very heavily on her because she was like, I can read it. I can kind of understand what people are saying. So I thought when I went last year, I would do that. Um, it didn't work super great. I understood a lot of things, but like I would say things in Spanish out of habit, and that didn't go over very well. Specifically with one waiter who was like, "Look, I'm Italian. I speak Italian. I speak English." He was like, "Don't come over here with that Spanish." I was like, "Okay." All right. I don't see I don't see too many newbie solo travelers in here. Um, okay, Alicia, as soon as I said that. First international solo trip is to Cancun, and I hope to stop by Tulum, afraid of navigating the environment and getting lost. Okay, this is what you need to do. On Google Maps, you can choose a location. So let's say Cancun, let's say Tulum, and you can download the map for offline use. Okay. So that's number one. That way, if you're in some area where the cell service isn't great, you can still access Google Maps. Now, it is not searchable. The other thing you need to do before you go on your trip, before you download the map, is add locations. Like I always add the hotel I'm staying in or the Airbnb, wherever that is. I add it and I make it a symbol like a gold star. If there are places that I want to visit, I add those to the map. Okay. So even if I don't have cell service, even if I'm lost or whatever, I can open the Google map. The blue dot is always going to show you where you are. If you are offline, you won't be able to put in the address that you're trying to go to, but you can look at the blue dot that shows you. You can look at the star you put for the hotel or whatever it is you're trying to get to, and you can watch, like, okay, I'm walking toward the star, I'm walking away, and you can make that adjustment. That's that's one of the reasons I have no fear about getting lost anywhere, is because that's what I do for every trip I take. Um, I mark the hotel. If I'm going for a specific event, there's a venue, what have you, I mark all of those things on my Google Map, and then I make sure that I download the Google Map for offline use before I go. Okay, working twice as hard. I'm glad to hear you say this. I've been in Montreal for over a year and my French is terrible, but it hasn't stopped me from being able to get around because I will be in Montreal in July. Yeah. And I was a little concerned about this because I've heard about how folks in Quebec are about French. So I'm glad to know that it shouldn't be too big of a deal. Uh, In Portugal, Google Translate. Now, I've not heard of, is it DeepL? DEEPL? I've not heard of this one. I'll have to check it out. Um, that's something else. I noticed what you're saying about write down what you're going to need. Um, I always, like when I was in China, when I was in Kuwait, any country where I they don't use the same alphabet that we do, I would get like a card from the people at the front desk of the hotel with the address on it, and I carry that with me. That way, if I'm out in the streets and I can't figure out how to get back on my own, I just pull out that card and I'm like, here, me go here. Oh, okay. Thank y'all for telling me how cute I look. I appreciate it. I didn't do anything special, but I appreciate it. Okay. All right. All right, now evolve. I asked God to give me a sign that it's going to be all good. And then I saw this video notification. Hey, the universe tends to unfold as it should. Um, I don't think there is any reason why we as Black women should not be able to travel any place we want to be. I know historically, solo travel, backpacking, that kind of stuff is not something that's been associated with our community. But we are out here, we are doing it. I just did a podcast interview, and I know y'all are like, girl, you still do the podcast? I know it's been a minute, but I just interviewed somebody for the podcast who took her kids backpacking in Guatemala back in 1999. So we are out here, we are doing it. Okay, Auntie Lou, this is a great question because I think that this is one of the big concerns, one of the big roadblocks that a lot of people, a lot of women will, you know, keep them from living their travel dreams. Um, Now, y'all know me. I'm gonna say, my first question is, well, what is safe travel? What does it mean to be safe? Are we using our everyday life as the basis for comparison as to is this other place as safe? You know, how are we doing that? Do I believe solo travel is safe travel? Yes. Do I believe that solo travel is inherently more dangerous than going with other people? No, I don't. Because again, in my day-to-day life, I am doing all of those things by myself. Um, so I see they kind of go hand in hand. Okay. Now I'm trying to see if there are any more newbies in the comments, and I don't see any. Ah, winning in education. I travel solo, but I still struggle with eating alone. I get this. I hear a lot of people. Um, I don't what I'm more afraid of is being solo, eating alone, and folks thinking that that's an invitation for them to come over and chat me up and like keep me from being lonely. No, I don't. I want to eat alone. And I know a lot of us can feel like self-conscious about that kind of thing. Um, I don't think anybody's looking at you, honestly. I know when I'm in a restaurant, I am not paying any attention to folks who are eating by themselves. That's not my business. My business is on my plate. Uh, so, but I get it. I am very behind in the chat. I'm seeing that now. I'm trying to get down to the end of it. Oh my gosh, I'm very behind in the chat. Yeah, eating alone, that is my preference. But if it's kind of like now, one thing I've had to work on, and this comes from being a school teacher all those years, I eat very quickly because we had 25 minutes for lunch. So I have to work at like not eating my food so quickly. So I might bring like my Kindle or a journal or something like that and just kind of like things to other things to do so that I don't just wolf down my food, you know. But no, nobody's watching you. Nobody cares if you're eating by yourself. If anything, they might be jealous. They wish they could eat by themselves. Um, okay. I'm I am very behind in the chat. I went down to the bottom and now my computer's being stupid about going back up. Okay. So, Um, it doesn't seem like we got a lot of newbies here tonight, but I do have sort of some general tips, tricks. Y'all please chime in with yours as well. Um, for Black women who want to travel solo and how they can do it confidently. I think that's kind of the first thing. Okay. Um, Here's the thing, like, who was it earlier was talking about, I have this irrational fear about being someplace and not knowing the language. Having fear is a normal human emotion. Like, don't feel bad if you have some fear, you have some anxiety around the idea of traveling by yourself. Um, you know, so one, chill out, give yourself some grace on that. Two is, especially if you're new to this, forget everything you think you know about solo travel. It's very interesting to see. Now, this doesn't happen so much in my solo travel group, but I am a member in some other groups as well. Um, and somebody, especially if it's a mixed group, men, women, all kinds of travel, um, somebody will post something about, like, oh, I'm frustrated because my friends were supposed to go on this trip with me and everybody canceled. I think I might go solo. And then there are these people who chime in like, girl, don't do that. It's so dangerous. You're gonna get human trafficked. And like, oh, this happens when you travel solo, blah blah blah. I say forget everything you think you know about solo travel. Like, just let go of that. Stop watching and the crime shows and listening to those podcasts and all that. And if there is a place that you want to go by yourself, start by doing the research. Like, if your dream was to go to, I don't know, I don't know. Let's say your dream is to go to Iceland. You want to see the what are the lights called? The Northern Lights. Okay, so start by doing your research. Start by doing your Googles. If you're concerned that that you might be the victim of some kind of crime, do some research to actually figure out, is that a thing that happens there? Because all too often people just go off of what other people tell them about a location. And I'm not trying to downplay or dismiss firsthand experience, because that's important, especially when you're traveling while Black. um, Hearing how someone else who was Black, what was their experience in that place. Hey, that's very important for us. But don't let people dissuade you from going somewhere, telling you it's dangerous or you got to watch out for this, that, and the other thing. And then you do your Googles and you find out, like, oh, that country is actually one of the safest places for this particular crime that I'm concerned about. That's like this next month in March, we're having the first Reclaim retreat in El Salvador. And Ivana and I were just talking to somebody, and I can't remember who it was we were talking to. And they were like, El Salvador. And is it safe? And I was like, yeah, El Salvador just got named the safest country in Latin America. But going off of what other people say, they wouldn't know that. So, forget what you think you know as a fact and do the research to find out the truth. Okay. Um, and then find community, because there may be people in your life who are like, no, you should not. It's dangerous out there. You should not be traveling by yourself. You got to find other people who want to do the same thing. That's part of the reason that I created the Facebook group, Picky Girls Travel Solo, to give Black women a place that was specifically created for them to talk and connect with other Black women who were trying to travel solo. Definitely. Okay. Um, okay, tease time. Someone asked me, "Are you black?" When I said I like hiking. They talked about bears attacking me. Do bears only attack black folks? But no, I know what you mean. Like we don't hike. Like I said, we got to let go of that of these things that we know. Like black folks don't hike. There are I was just black folks hike, they swim, they ski. I just what is the thing that just happened in Vale? Cuz I don't ski. That is not my thing, but I didn't realize how many people I knew that did because my timeline was full of pictures from whatever black ski conference. I don't know what it was called, but I saw everybody there. Okay. MT. I'm afraid of picking an inadequate hotel to stay at and being stuck or the hygiene of the hotel not being up to my standard. I've had all of that happen to me. So here's the thing. If you have a very specific fear like this, I say anticipate that, like have a plan, you know, hope for the best, plan for the worst. So if you've done your due diligence and you read the reviews and you looked at the pictures, and from everything you can tell, the hotel should be fine. Okay, what happens if you get there and the hotel is not fine? Um, can you have the name of a couple of backup places? Because that's the beauty I have found of like having rideshare apps in these different places. Like if something ain't right, as long as I can get on Wi-Fi or I've got cell service, I can call an Uber, a Didi, a Bolt, you know, a Grab, depending on what country I'm in, what they call it, whatever it is. I know how to get, to some other place. So if this is a concern, so what would you do if this turned out to be true? You would want to go somewhere else. So why not have the name and address of a couple of backup places? We're gonna hope that the place you picked does what it's supposed to do and gives what it's supposed to give. But if it doesn't, you've already got plan B ready. Okay. Oh, you're lucky that you haven't had a bad Airbnb experience. I have had bad Airbnbs. I've had bad hotels. I'm trying to think, where was I when, oh, I was in Kiev in the Ukraine. And this is kind of, how they say you should always follow your first mind. I knew when I looked at the pictures online, something was off. I do this with hotels. I do this with Airbnbs. When they give you all the pictures of like, well, here's the bedroom and here's the kitchen and blah, blah, blah. Like I'm trying to put together in my head a mental floor plan of how things are laid out. And so this was a hostel I was booking on booking.com. And I remember looking at the pictures like, for what they're describing, these pictures don't add up. Like there's not enough rooms, there's not enough beds. I remember it being something like that, but it was like $5 a day. I mean, it was something ridiculously cheap. So I booked it anyway. And I can't remember if I did this on purpose or not, but I did not pay for it. It was one of those things like you pay when you get there. Okay, so I land, I use the rideshare app there. I think it was Bolt. I get dropped off at the location and I can't, there's no sign for the hostel, which that's not unusual. And so I enter a hostel and they're like, no, that's not us. They're next door. I go next door. It's like if somebody had a two-bedroom apartment but decided to turn it into a hostel. I didn't realize at the time that I hadn't paid for it. I thought I had paid for it. But I got in there and, she's giving me the tour and she's explaining how it works. And I'm looking around and I was like, no, this is not it. And um I didn't even I didn't even say to them anything. I pulled it up on my phone because I was like, "Oh well, I'm not going to stay here. I'll just be out this money." I happened to pull up the email on my phone because whatever they were giving me was not what I thought I was going to get. So I'm pulling up the email on my phone to like double check. Didn't they say they had X, Y, and Z? I noticed I ain't even paid for it. I said, "Okay, thank you." And then I put my bag on my shoulder and I walked out the door. And I had no plan, but the hostel next door was really nice. And so I ended up staying there. So yeah, I have had bad hostels, I've had bad Airbnbs, and I'm like, that's not going to ruin a trip for me. I'm going to figure out a way to pivot from that. Okay. See, Adrian is adventurous, y'all. If you're not following her on Instagram, she be driving all kind of places and doing all kind of stuff. Ended up sleeping in my car at a campsite because one of the hotels I booked in Botswana was pure trash. Like that's it happens. And it happens sometimes despite our best efforts. You just find a way to pivot from it. I knew when I booked it, I was like, something about this don't seem right, but that price, because this was one stop in a like 9, 10 country trip over 28, 29 days. And you know what? I was ready to just lose that money. Turns out I hadn't paid them, so I didn't lose anything. I've had this was not a solo trip, but rented a we it was like an Airbnb kind of thing, but it wasn't Airbnb in London. The furnace, no, well, not the furnace, the boiler went out. So it's winter in London and we have no hot water. At one point, we had to go stay in a hotel and take showers at the gym. You find ways to pivot. So if you think I'm traveling solo, I'm by myself, okay, if something bad like this does happen, what's your pivot? What do you think you're going to do? If it's going to make you feel better to look up the names of a couple of hotels nearby, do that. Okay, I'm trying to work my way backward through the comments. Okay. I share my itinerary with someone back home. I put an air tag in my bag. I take fun pictures all along my walking route just in case to become landmarks and help me find my way back to the starting point. That sounds awesome. I've talked about this before. I use Tripit. I use the free version of Tripit and I put everything for my trips in there. And there's a feature where you can share your travel plans. And so there are three people, my oldest daughter, my cousin, and my best friend, who, like they don't know what my travel plans are, but they know when they get one of those emails, they're like, oh, okay. So if she doesn't show up in a few days, here we have where everywhere she was. So on TripIt, I don't just put the hotel and the flight. Like if part of my plan is, oh, on this day, I'm just going to wander this neighborhood. Like I've heard so much about this neighborhood. I'm going to wander the streets. I literally will put that in there so that if something were to happen, they have as many breadcrumbs as possible to try and retrace my steps. I went to Oman by myself, rented a car, and was attempting to go several places. And so like I had done some last minute research and I forget what time it was that I sent the picture because of the time difference, but wrote down the places I was trying to go that day. Cell phone service was spotty in the desert. So I just sent a picture of my list to my friend. I was like, hey, I'm traveling through the desert in Oman. This is where I'm trying to go. If you don't hear from me by like 8 p.m. tonight, you might want to contact the hotel. And so I assume she got that text like 3, 4 a.m. in the morning or whatever. But I let people know my plans far more when I travel than when like I live my everyday life of like where I'm gonna be and what I'm gonna be doing. This is a good this is a good tip. If you are nervous about the place not being up to standards, arrive early to the place so you have time to source another one before sunset. That is an excellent tip. This is so true, Lydia. Some of us will try and dissuade you from going anywhere they haven't been. My family didn't want to move to LA because of gangs and earthquakes. Talking about you grew up in the South in the 60s. That's just it. So, this is why finding community, finding other Black women who are trying to do the same thing is so important, is because you're, it's what is it? I can't get the quote now, but basically, everybody in your life isn't meant for every part of your life. There are some people you share, your professional aspirations with. There are some people you talk to about other things. Then, you make your travel friends, and those are the people that you kick around the different ideas about, like, oh, this is where I'm thinking about going. These are my concerns. Did anybody have any issues like this when they travel to this place? You know, oh, what is my computer doing? Um, I think you have to consider the source when someone tells you a place isn't safe or they experience racism. A lot of people carry their US trauma and expectations and standards to other countries. That is very true. And here's the thing, y'all, we're Black. We're going to be Black everywhere we go. And just like Miss Ma'am, who needed to center herself and left me that comment about like why this conversation needed to be for or about Black women. We know that doesn't matter what country we go to, whether that country has its own Black and brown people or it doesn't. There's certain things we have to be concerned about because of the way we look. But here's the thing about racism. I think, because I see this a lot in some groups, somebody will say, like, hey, is such and such country racist? Or they'll ask, did anybody have issues with racism in this country? Well, everybody's experience is going to be different. But also, there's one thing of, I got denied service because I look like this. It's another thing of, I might end up dead because I look like this. So, and that's a concern in the country of my birth, that because of who I am, because of the color of my skin, I could easily be dead. So, colorism, racism, classism, we're going to deal with all of those things no matter what country we go to. I'm more concerned with, like, is there violence toward women? Is there violence toward people who look like me? Like, that's to me the thing I would be most concerned about. And the thing is, you can do your best, you can do your research, you can talk to people who've been there, and what their experience could be versus your experience could be totally different. And that's okay. All right, we got some swimmers and hikers in here. I don't know what cocaine bear is. I don't know what that is. Okay. I'm not quite caught up, but I'm kind of caught up. Oh, I thought. All right. Told my nephew I plan to visit Mexico City to see if I want to move there. He say they have the cartel there. My response was, dude, I live in Baltimore. It is so interesting being from the United States. Somebody else said it in the chat about how in the US, people are so desensitized to the violence that exists there that people will tell you things like, oh, you shouldn't go to Mexico because of cartel violence. Is there not drug gang violence in the United States? Like, is it the devil you know versus the devil you don't? I don't know, but it is a very interesting thing to watch. And so if you that just again underscores the importance of finding a group of finding other people trying to do the same thing you're trying to do, um, so that you can talk to them about it. Move back up here. Okay, I saw there were a few questions. What country did I enjoy the most solo? Um, hmm, I don't know. I don't know. Um, I can tell you I'm going to love any place that has mass transit because the beauty of mass transit is you generally don't need to speak to anybody. So, especially when language is an issue. So, like when I went to the first time I went to Beijing by myself, had no Mandarin. I could figure out how to buy a metro ticket. I could look on Google, and Google told me this is where the station was, this is where I needed to get off, versus being someplace where you have to try and catch a taxi and you got to have a conversation with folks. Then you got to haggle with them over the price if there are no meters. I'm not about that life. So any place that has mass transit is always going to be a favorite of mine. So London, uh, Berlin, Mexico City. Um, but if it's not a place like that, like I really enjoyed Iceland, but that's the Iceland is good for a week. You don't need any more time than that. I think it might be a better question to ask me what places I didn't enjoy, like that I'm like I'm good. I don't have to go back there. That is how I felt about China after I spent that week in Beijing. I saw everything I needed to see. I never needed to go back there ever again. Little did I know I would return as a tourist and then I'd end up living there. Um, I know that's not a very helpful answer because for me, I like I like traveling. Um, yeah, I think for me, I can tell you the places that I didn't like more than I can tell you the places I did because I like places on a trip during a trip for whatever the purpose of that trip is. Um, which probably is not a super helpful answer. Okay, we had another question. Questions about packing. I have two 21-inch monitors, two laptops, cords, cable fit nicely in my middle-sized suitcase. But I was told to split it up, carry it into to two different suitcases to avoid paying fees. I think the answer to this question, Shona, is if you're talking about Mexico, you absolutely want to split those up because but even if you split them into different suitcases that might not save you but yeah because and this is something that we don't think about this when we're traveling as tourists but Countries have different rules about things you can bring into them. So, like coming into Mexico, you are allowed one laptop computer. So, even if you have your personal computer and your work computer, as far as Mexico is concerned, you can bring one. So, if they happen to stop you at customs, they are going to tax you for importing the other. Okay. Um, I did not know, but in Indonesia, you cannot carry on a tripod. I did not know that until I tried to carry on a tripod and they were like, no, ma'am. Now, I brought it into Indonesia as a carry on. I flew onto the island of Java, where the capital is. I stayed in Yogyakarta, but then I flew to Bali. And when I tried to fly to Bali, they were like, no, you have to check your bag with the tripod in it. So that's if you're like a little anxious about things that could go wrong, that may be one of the things you want to do is look at the country, the destination you're choosing. What are the rules for things and that you can bring in? I'm not talking about just things you could bring in like as a carry-on versus checked, but like the computer laptop situation like in Mexico, like because you could full well be coming here as a tourist and have two laptops because you have two laptops. Um, but whoever is working at customs that day may not care. And to them, you're trying to import this second laptop, so they're going to charge you tax on it, something like that. The largest carry on 23 inches, possibly two of them can fit in there. Does that mean the bags won't get checked or expect? No, they're specifically for Mexico. There is no guarantee of, there's nothing you can do to guarantee that they won't check your bag. I have been pretty lucky in most of the times that I've come back and forth, but there is nothing you can do that's just gonna like guarantee it. It's luck of the draw, unfortunately. Oh, oh, maybe if I do it like this. Oh, this works so much better. If I try to scroll like this. I love traveling abroad solo, but dealing with my obsessive fear of getting lost makes me a neurotic planner. Okay. I d I don't know if you mean it this way, Stephanie, but this sounds like you're coming down on yourself for being a planner, wanting to cover your bases. And if that's what it takes to get you out the door, so be it. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. Money Coach Malika went to El Salvador last year. It was fun, pleasantly surprised. Yeah, it's a country that is working on getting back its name, its reputation, because for so long it was not viewed as a great place to go. Okay, so me scrolling that way is not helping. Okay, Global Granny found out that you cannot go to Colombia on a one-way ticket. You have to have a round trip ticket. Is okay, I'm thinking that this is a Colombia thing because that is the only country where I have ever had an issue about, like, do you have a round trip ticket? People, especially if you are planning to bop around, especially if it's going to be a longer term trip that maybe you haven't figured it all out and you've just you bought a one way ticket, then you're going to see, what you're going to do. I did that. I flew into Bangkok, and then from there, from Thailand, I went to Malaysia, and I went to Cambodia, and I went to Singapore, but I didn't buy any of those tickets ahead of time, and it was no big deal. But when I went to Colombia, when I was coming back, not only were they worried about me having a ticket out of Colombia, then they were like, well, why don't you have a ticket from Mexico? And I was like, I live in Mexico. And it's like, I don't need another ticket. So usually it's a thing the airlines trip about. It's usually not a country policy, but I had a similar issue in Colombia, which is making me wonder if that's a Colombia thing. Ooh, Adrian, this is a good one. Um, Double checking about the size of a carry-on and the carry-on weight requirement, as well as the check bag requirement, because what flies in North America may not be what's okay in Europe or Asia or what have you. And we make those assumptions and then get caught out. Comfort has been watching To Catch a Smuggler, and those custom fees are so high. Yeah, I was watching To Catch a Smuggler and I was falling asleep, so I kept having these dreams about smuggling things. It was that was not the kind of thing I should be watching. Um, why do people try to take so many electronics overseas? Seems like you'd be fine with a phone and a laptop. I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends if part of the trip is work, part of the trip is vacation. Especially if you're going to be there for like 3, 6 months, you might need your equipment. I travel with equipment because I'm supposed to be filming things, I'm supposed to be making content. um, that hasn't really happened yet, but I'm supposed to be doing that. I cannot tell y'all how many times going through security, doesn't matter the country, this microphone, that's always something that they end up having to search my bag for, or a tripod. Like I was coming back from Cabo San Lucas in Mexico to Mexico City, and the people at the Cabo airport were like, no, you can only carry, they were like, you could do a tripod this size. But I happened to have my full size tripod with me that I flew into Cabo with, no problem. Flew domestically in Mexico, no issue. But leaving Cabo, they were like, no. And I had to pay $60 because it was a budget airline. And you know them, when you add a bag late, the fee is ridiculous. So I had to pay $60 just to check my tripod. But I had to check flying from Florida to Honduras once, I had to check an umbrella. Now, the umbrella was probably about 2.5 feet long, and they would not let me take it on board. I had to, that was literally the only thing that was checked. They ended up putting it in a big clear bag and had to put a tag on it. And then I had to go and collect it when I got off the plane. It was so stupid. So stupid. Okay. Okay. Let's see. I'm seeing if there were any other questions in here. This is very true, Malika. To be fair, our trauma in the US runs so deep, it takes time for a new traveler to relax their defenses and when traveling to other countries. That is very true. And I have found that the longer you are outside the US, when you have to go back to the US, you can feel all of that, the weight of all of that come back on, which is no fun, which is no fun. Um, do you recommend having your luggage shipped ahead? This is something that people do. There are a lot of services like Send My Bag, Ship My Luggage. They all got names like that. And there is a good, I can see a good argument for this, especially if you're traveling with something large and bulky, you're traveling by yourself. You can ship your bag. They send your suitcase via like FedEx. They pick it up at your door, they drop it off at the next door. Um, I think that's great, but something you have to be very careful of if you're going to use a service like that is how you pack the bag, because the bag still has to go through customs in the new country. And so you need to make sure that prohibited items are not in there. Like, I think you can't pack liquids. Uh, Really, it's meant to be clothing and nothing else. So especially if you're concerned about your ability to navigate the airport and like how many bags you have. Using a service like that to send your bags ahead could be a lifesaver. Um, it could be a lifesaver. Yes, you can you can bring a lot of things into Mexico. Now, when you try to leave, if you're talking about as a checked bag or as a carry-on, when you try to leave, that might get tricky. Like when I first came to Mexico in 2017, my carry-ons were the dog and my sewing machine. Like, I didn't have the sewing machine in a bag or anything. I just had a hard cover on the outside. It looked like I was carrying a sewing machine. Brought that into Mexico, no problem. Tried to do the same thing when I left, and they were like, absolutely not. You got to check that. Mind you, I had already checked 3 bags. So I was not happy about that. So coming into Mexico is generally fairly easy. I have traveled with my cameras, tripods, microphones, that kind of stuff. I've not had any issues coming into Mexico with those. Okay. So we were talking about, like, doing your research, finding out for yourself, connecting with other Black women, like my Facebook group, the Exodus Summit Facebook group. There is the Expat app, XPAT, which is not just for Black women, but it is for Black folks who are traveling, studying, or moving abroad. So find other people who you can talk to about what you're doing. The other thing, if you are going to be traveling solo, you got to stop shoulding all over your trip about, like, this is what I should be doing or this is where I should be going. Um, no, like, I hate it when I see those posts where people are like travel shaming first. Like, first of all, we shouldn't be travel shaming folks. But then they say, there'll be a meme or something that's like, what we're not going to do is eat at McDonald's in another country, or we're not going to eat at someplace in another country that we have at home. We're not going to have chicken tenders when we're at this other country because we got that at home. No, there are no shoulds when it comes to your trip, other than you should be doing whatever the hell it is you want to do. That's the beauty of traveling solo. Okay, so if you are highly anxious, and as someone who is a extremely picky eater, there are places I have gone where the the meat on the plate is still moving, like that kind of stuff. And you're like, oh no, I can't do this. And there's a McDonald's over there or what have you. Go eat the comfort food. Go do the thing that is going to help you relax and keep you from losing it wherever you are. Um, there again, the only should when it comes to your trip is you should be doing what it is you want. That is the beauty of solo travel. And so if you find yourself like out on the trip or even in the preparation of the trip, getting anxious, getting nervous, getting fearful, remember why solo travel is so beautiful. You get to do whatever it is you want, whenever you want to do it, and you get to go see only the things that are of interest to you. Like, this is a time that is all about you and what you want to do. If you want to sleep in till noon, 1 p.m., that's your business. That's your trip. There are no shoulds here. Oh, yes, glass half full. There are travel shamers. There are gatekeepers who will talk about, like, oh, I hate to see when other people do this on their trip, or you shouldn't be doing this, or uh, somebody else's trip is not my business. It is not. Okay. So, like I said, you gotta let go of all of that. If if in order for you to feel okay on this trip, you only eating at places with menu items that you are familiar with. Like, you don't have to be some super adventurous eater. You don't have to go to like all of these foodie recommended place. Uh, it is, Adrian said it, it's okay to do what you want or nothing at all. If you happen to pick a hotel and you like are loving this room and you just want to sit in that room and eat room service and watch TV and sit in the tub, that is your business. That is your trip. That you can do whatever you want. That again, like that is the beauty of traveling solo. You don't have to be on anybody else's schedule. You don't have to compromise about the activities, the attractions that you're going to see. It's all about you. Okay, comfort. Life is a lot lighter when you stop worrying about what other people are doing. So yeah, we're letting go of shoulds. Okay, here's another one. I see this a question a lot, like where should I go? Or what's the best place for a Black woman to go? Um, I don't know. That's a hard question to answer because I think a best place for a Black woman to go is anywhere she damn well pleases. But there is no best place, like the best place to go for my first solo trip. It, that does not exist. And I don't think strangers on the internet can answer that question for you. Now, that's different than saying, I am interested in fashion and design. What would be a good destination where I can explore those things? See, that's a totally different question. And strangers on the internet might be able to help you answer that one. Do I take Mia with me when I travel? I try to, especially because she is older now. Uh, but I can't always. My personal rule is if I'm going to be gone more than 2 weeks, I try to take her with me. Um, but there are some places that just don't lend themselves to traveling with a dog. Like one of the things I initially this spring, I wanted to spend like a month in Portugal. And then I was like, okay, well, where else can I go? And I thought, well, I'll be in Portugal. Why not bop over to someplace in Africa? I thought about South Africa. I can't bring a dog into South Africa as a in cabin pet. So that means whenever I eventually go to South Africa, homegirl is not coming with me. So I do try to travel with her, and that's a whole nother set of logistics when I take her places with me. So if you've got a small animal, small dog, you can definitely take them with you traveling solo. Larger dogs, that's going to be trickier if you're trying to travel internationally. Traveling domestically in the US with a dog is not that hard. The problem is, unlike other countries, there aren't an overabundance of, let's say, like dog friendly hotels and things like that. Okay. Okay. Anna Jane, I'm on my first trip in Mexico. How do you handle feeling like the other? I typically enjoy going places on my own in the United States, but being a tourist, I struggle. Well, I have more issue when people other me versus like I just don't blend in. So like n- n- there are black Mexicans, okay? Whether all Mexicans know there are or not. So somebody looking at me like theoretically I could be Mexican, but most folks are not thinking that way. However, I a lot of times, especially like in Spanish speaking countries, I just kind of I keep my mouth shut a lot of times because I guess that's more about like I would rather not be labeled the American right out the bat. So I keep my mouth shut a lot of times. And this is again when that body language comes in. Um, it's different for me at least here and in other countries where it's just like, okay, you don't look like us, but I don't, I try not to do things that set me apart. Does that make any sense? Versus like when I was in China, when they were othering me. Like, yes, obviously, I am not Chinese. I am nobody's Chinese, but they went out of their way to make me feel othered. Whereas in other countries, I don't look like the locals, but I try not to do things that make me stand out. So a lot of times I kind of like move in silence. I keep my mouth shut, you know. Um, I keep a low profile. Is there something specific happening? Um, or is it just you're in a place where people don't look like you and you're just feeling different? Because I would say that that might be more in your that might be more of you feeling that than them feeling that way. Like I in my experience in Mexico, nobody has gone out of their way to make me feel foreign, although it's obvious that I am, which is different than when I was in China. Okay. Y'all have several questions about Mia. How does that work when you take her with you? Does she adjust well to new environments? Okay. So, if I am going to travel internationally with the dog, the first thing I need to find out are the entry requirements for that country. And I did a video on this, but every country's going to have different requirements. So I need to figure out what those are first, and then I need to figure out what the airline's requirements are. And so usually it's about she needs a health certificate. I need to contact the airline to make sure that there is space on the flight because airlines will often limit how many animals in cabin they will allow. So, like, she went to California with me 2, 3 weeks ago. And when I added her to the ticket, they were like, oh, that's the last spot. So, had I delayed a little bit more, because technically, with most airlines, you can just show up at the airport and be like, oh, yeah, I want to add this animal to bring in cabin. But because they have limited space, I don't suggest doing that. And then I look for accommodations that allow dogs. I have to buy her a spot on the plane, which is bogus, because she's underneath the seat, but whatever. And then finding a hotel or Airbnb that allows dogs. Now, does she adjust well to new environments? Kinda. She travels very well. The people on the plane were like, "Oh, she didn't know the dog was down there." She travels very well. But like when I wanted to go to South Africa, South Africa does not allow dogs to enter the country in cabins. So that meant if I took her with me to South Africa, she would have to go under the plane. That kind of environment she will not handle very well. I often joke that I am her emotional support human. So, any country that requires quarantine, any airline that would require she had to be in cargo, we can't do that because she can't handle that. But like we're in a new country, a new state, whatever, she's just like, okay, whatever. Cool. She handles all of that part of it really, really well. See? Okay. Now y'all always hear Rashida disparaging my dog, but see here Roxanne is to tell y'all the truth. Okay. Um Oh, wait, was that a question right there? Okay, so we were talking about like don't should all over your trip. Don't be concerned about the things that you should be doing, all of that. A lot of questions we get are like, okay, I'm going to travel by myself, but who's going to take my pictures? Um, well, you can use a tripod or you can ask strangers to do it. If you're like me and an introvert, you're probably never going to ask a stranger to take your picture. But those of you who are extroverted, people like doing that. Y'all can ask them. Oh, I follow Elise Lightyear. We've had several conversations of things she's posted, and I've been like, "Oh yeah, I remember that from when I was there." So yeah, no, we're connected on Instagram. Okay, Ina. I think I carry some type of racial trauma from the US and maybe it's paranoia. I had reason to get nervous if people paid too much attention to me in the US. That's very true. And I think that's part of the reason why when I travel by myself, I kind of like to keep a low profile. I will wander a neighborhood, I'll wander through a market and again, I know people see me and can physically tell she's not from here, but I don't do things that make me stand out. And my experience has been, with the exception of being in East Asia, that most people it's not a big deal. And I will say this has been my experience in Mexico. For the most part, Mexicans mind their business unless they got business with you that requires you to pay them or them to pay you. And I don't think most people are worried about your presence. Not, but again, coming from the US and being a Black person, that's a hard adjustment to make. That is an adjustment to make because in the US, we're never safe. No matter what mundane thing we are doing or participating in, we are never safe. And of course, you're going to come somewhere else. And if you look different, that may draw additional looks your way. And I could totally see how that might trigger that feeling of like, like I need to be concerned about this. I definitely get that. Okay. Second time traveler. All right, Lauren. How do you deal with loneliness or anxiety traveling alone? Um, Loneliness is not something I have dealt with because I don't, I'm an introvert. Do introverts get lonely? I don't know. But okay, so let's say if I wanted to be around other people. This is one of the reasons that folks like to stay in hostels because there's kind of like this built-in community, this built-in group of people who are a lot of them are traveling by themselves as well. And so like maybe there is a landmark or an activity you want to do, but you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that by myself. If you're staying at a hostel, it's very easy to say, hey, does anybody want to go here with me tomorrow? Um, if you're not staying at a hostel, like I was thinking about this the other day. There are people I know now because I was in a travel group and posted about where I was staying in Malaysia. and somebody was coming from India, and they happened to be in Kuala Lumpur, going to be in Kuala Lumpur at the same time I was. We connected, and like we're still Instagram friends now, and have bumped into each other places around the world. So that then goes back to like a Facebook group, the expat app, something like that, where you can either connect with other travelers or just post, hey, this is what I'm feeling. Because it might, the people on your regular timeline, if you post like, oh, I'm on this trip and I'm really feeling lonely, that's when you might get the folks to be like, well, you shouldn't have went. Ain't nobody tell you to go over there. But if you're connected with other travelers, whether they're physically there or not, they're definitely going to be more empathetic to that. Anxiety, I would try and do the things that you typically do to alleviate anxiety. You know, I was doing yoga this morning, and she was talking about where the breath goes, the body follows. So you find yourself getting anxious, you take a moment and you kind of slow down your breathing, and you take some deep cleansing breaths and start asking yourself the question, okay, what's bothering me? Is this something I can control? Because if it's something you can control, all right, how do I fix this thing? If it's something out of your control, does it do you any good to be getting super anxious about it? Um, so I don't know. If anybody else has something to add there, please jump in the chat. Okay, this is another good question. How do you keep your valuables and belongings safe? Wanting to swim at the beach, but not with your money or phone. Some people bury their stuff in the sand. There's the trick of putting your stuff inside of a baby diaper and making it look like a used baby diaper. But I found I cannot tell y'all the name of this brand, but they make like fanny packs that are watertight. I have it bookmarked on my old computer. If I can remember it, I'll put it in the description of this video. But they make like purses and fanny packs that are water sealable. And so if I was somebody who swam in the ocean, because I'm not, but if I was, I would put my stuff in that and I would wear it on me. Me personally, and I guess this is my own paranoia, I like to have the important things physically on my person. This is why when I travel, I always have some kind of cross body bags, small, where my passport is, some cash, a credit card. I don't know what I think is going to happen, but I think in my head I have like these images of like a bomb goes off, like a coup attempt, something happens and you just gotta run. I want my stuff physically on my body. I don't want to have to grab it. So if I was somebody who swam in the ocean, that is where I would keep those things. Me personally, I would keep them on my body. Um, I would not leave them away from me. I'd want them physically on me. Okay. Um, what was the name of the duffel bag? You talking about the bag that I use for my carry-on? The super super small bag that goes underneath the seat in front? That is from Red Ox. It is an extra small aviator bag. But the big bags that I use as check bags, those are often called either soft-sided trunks, or if you go like to Amazon or something, they're often called deployment bags. Okay. Ivana says, I think it's important to learn about cultural norms. Staring isn't necessarily seen as rude or confrontational depending on the location. Absolutely, absolutely. Um, and again, I think this is a uniquely Black American thing with we have to be on alert at all times in the US. We have to be ready, a look from the wrong person, a sudden movement, that kind of thing, that hyper awareness, that hyper vigilance. We often bring that with us when we travel other places. And if we don't know what the cultural norm is there, it's easy for us to misinterpret that. Working twice as hard, introvert here, but asking strangers to take a photo is actually good for starting a conversation if you want to talk to people. Because as I read this, I was like, but I don't want to talk to people. Oh, it is, and again, uh, Malika talks about in the US, I'm used to being watched, followed in stores. In Mexico, when I'm watched, it is for different reasons. They're usually being helpful. It took me a while to understand this difference. And again, this is again why we're having this conversation here. This is why I created the Facebook group because I don't think white Americans are oblivious to this. Um, they don't understand that all of that hyper awareness, having to deal with all of that crap, it takes a toll on us, and it can contribute to the anxiety or the anxiousness you might feel when you're traveling. And I think the only people you can talk to who are going to understand that are folks who look like you. Let's see. Okay, Adrian. Having traveled to over 60 countries, I can say that people around the world find Black women interesting and magical, but not in a bad way. Also, traveling by yourself makes people curious about you. I think that that last part, especially, um, it is in a lot of places, it is still unusual to see women travel by themselves. So, the fact that you are a Black woman and you are traveling by yourself is going to bring some attention to you. And we have to remember that not all attention is necessarily going to be bad. But that might get more people having a conversation with you, that might be more people, looking at you, because you can look at somebody and not be a malicious or malevolent thing. It's like, wow, I wonder, this is what I get in Mexico a lot. The vibe to me is often like, "Hmm, like how'd she end up here? Like I want to know the story behind how she ended up here." Okay. Okay, Roxanne says join groups focused on the area you're visiting and connect. I'm in a group called Black Women Expats in Panama, and we get a lot of solo travelers connecting with us and attending our events. Definitely. Because you can, especially if you're planning to bop around, you definitely want to connect with people on the ground who are in those places. If for nothing more, even because as an introvert, like it's going to be a hard thing for me to hit up somebody and be like, hey, do you want to go hang out? But if I even have somebody on the ground that I can, send a text or a DM to ask a question like, this is the neighborhood of an Airbnb I'm considering. Like, is this an okay place to stay? Or, should I pick something closer over here or what have you? Or, all the way to they may be hosting an event and that gets you an opportunity to meet some people or to go see a thing or visit a place. Um, that you were wanting to. Do you ever get too comfortable in one place? No, I don't know. For me, I traveling solo is my preferred way to travel because you cannot travel with everybody. You may adore somebody, but y'all may not be compatible when it comes to traveling. Um, and for me, my thing is reminding myself not to try and go too many places. Like that trip I took to Europe where I was in a new city like every 2 days, that was dumb. I mean, like on the one hand, I didn't know we were at the beginning of a pandemic, and there are a lot of places I visited that I probably would not be able to get to now. Um, but at the same time, like that didn't really like it made parts of the trip kind of like drudgery because it was like, oh, I gotta pack my stuff and go here and go there and all of that. And so yeah. This I hadn't thought about this. It might be boredom as opposed to being lonely. Yeah, it may it's because and I think you have to ask yourself, what is it that I'm craving? Is it a connection to other people, a conversation with other people, or is it that I'm looking for something to do specifically? And really, and Kay, you hit the nail on the head. You meet more people when you travel by yourself. Like automatically, I can't tell you how many times, and y'all know I don't talk to strangers, but we might be out and about in the streets here in Mexico City, and we look up and there's a black girl by herself, and we're like, "Hey, black girl, like, do you need help? Do where you going? What you staying? Trying to be there for them." And I would we do that necessarily if there might be a group of people or if they look like they were in a couple? Maybe not. But traveling alone, you actually meet lots of people. So if one of the things that might be keeping you from traveling is this idea that I am going to be lonely, actually, you will probably find it to be the opposite. Okay. How? Oh, wow. I see. Khaleesi is up at 1:35 in the morning in Portugal. Hey, girl. Whoop, whoop. Okay. What is a good place to look up cultural norms for travelers? They used to have BYU, of all people, used to put out something called Culturegrams. And I'm seeing if they still do. Yup, they do. It's subscriber only. Ugh. If you're connected, if you've got any kind of connection with a school, a university, anything like that, see if they have a subscription or like they have like these free databases you can get in because you're associated with this school or this university. Culturegrams. BYU used to put these out. I'm old, so I remember when they came on paper. They're probably all online now. And it would kind of they were meant for the I was like, what is the word? I was going to say proselytizer, but that is not the word. The missionaries, like to give them a quick overview of a country. It would cover things like dating and, like how people say hello and that kind of stuff. Um, the State Department used to have a similar resource. I don't know if they still do. And I'm trying to think of what they were called. But there used to be a section on the State Department website. It was like in the education part where you would look up a particular country and it would give you a quick rundown. There is the CIA World Fact Book, which I think is free. Um, I would also go to like whatever the big tourism um, website is for a place. Those would be some of the places I would start looking. Well, seeing y'all are really in this chat, making it hard for me to keep up. Um, I did not see the question about a medical emergency. But but I do have a really good video that not enough people have watched on this channel about handling a medical emergency abroad. Um, it's called How to Handle a Medical Emergency Abroad. I talked to 3, 4 different Black women who had medical emergencies in Panama, South Africa, Mexico, and I feel like there was one more country. Um, I'm trying to scroll and my computer is being wonky. Okay, yeah, the tourism websites for that country, like whatever the main, not tourism agency, but what do you call it? Tourism bureau, kind of, that kind of give you like the brief overview of the country. That would be where I would look. Okay. All right. So hold on. I'm gonna give y'all a link to this video that everybody needs to watch. They really do. Hold on. I'm asking my computer to do a whole lot, and it's like, girl, you need to stop. All right. What to do if you get sick while traveling, blah, 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 so on and so forth. Here is the link, medical emergencies abroad. This is the video y'all need to watch. Tourism boards, yes, LLO. That's the word I was looking for. Tourism board. Um, okay. Astrid, I've been told to avoid telling people I'm traveling alone because it makes you an easy target. Now I'm wondering if that's a US fear thing. Well, I think yes and no. Like, does it make you an easy target? Like, okay. And this is because I'm selectively social already. So even in the US, I'm not trying to tell folks my business. Somebody could stop me on the street and ask me something, and I will straight up pretend like I'm with a group of people or I'm waiting on somebody because I don't need people knowing how I'm moving. And that kind of goes the same in another country, but I don't make a big deal of it. Now, like somebody will say something because as a woman traveling alone, you will get people that say, "Hey, where's your husband? Where are your friends?" And this might be some little old ladies who are asking you out of concern. And usually I will just come back with, "Oh, I'm waiting for them over there." But if you are somebody who, like, lying in the moment is going to be a hard thing for you to do, you can prepare a cover story ahead of time so that you already know what you're going to say if you feel like you need to say it. Um, but I do think some of that is a US fear thing. But also, I mean, if I'm a criminal and I'm looking for a mark, somebody by themselves might provide less of, like a greater opportunity. I might believe that than somebody with a group. Do I think you got to go as far as to like wear a fake wedding ring and all of that? I don't think so. But I think what your question also goes to is something else I was going to mention that's on my list, is that when you are traveling alone, you need to act like you belong there. You need to take up space. Don't don't move like prey. Like, walk around with your head up. Exude confidence, even if it's BS. Move like a confident person, like you are supposed to be there, like what you're doing is the most natural thing ever. Because what is it they always say? You act like you belong and nobody's going to ask you any questions. So if you are traveling alone and you are physically presenting like you are unsure of where you are or what you should be doing, like that may draw to you people who are looking to prey upon you. So I would say prepare in case you feel the need, like something about this don't feel right. I don't want them to know I am alone. Prepare your little cover story, but move around like you're supposed to be there, like you belong there. Take up space. I want to know who cut your hair. I did a video on this. Avar, he did his thing. Poor baby. I don't know if y'all can see how gray my hair is. I think he's like 20 maybe. And so when I get my hair cut and my gray is showing, he tries to like cover it with stuff to dye it. And I have to tell him, don't worry about that. But Lauren, there is a video on this channel. I think it is like getting a haircut in Mexico City or something like that. So you could see uh, who does my hair. Okay. I would suggest people watching and paying attention to what people are doing when they are shopping, greeting people, interacting. Okay, so this is another one of my tips. Um, Especially if you're very nervous about taking this trip, you're traveling by yourself, slow down. Remember, you're one of the beauties of traveling alone is you can come and go whenever you feel like it. So slow down. Like especially when I don't speak the language in a country and I have to do something, there has to be some transaction, I will step back physically and I will watch other people and I'm trying to see, okay, so that's they click on that first, then they take the ticket out of there and they do like there's no need for you to feel rushed and feel like, oh, I've got to do this thing and I've got to hurry up and do it perfectly and all that. No, I very much step back and I watch what are other people doing? How do you check out? Like in China, I didn't know this, that when you get things that need to be weighed, like produce, meat, whatever, there's a place, even though you put it in the bag, you don't take it to like in the US, you take it up to the front and there's either a sticker or the checker knows the number. I guess when there's still checkers, I guess now in the US, everything is self serve. But like when I used to be a cashier, I had to memorize all of these 4-digit codes for produce. Can y'all imagine how hard that was for me? And so I thought it worked the same way in China. And I got up to that line and they were like, no. I went back and I looked and I watched and I was like, oh, I've got to take it to this little place where they weigh it, they put a sticker on it, and then I take it up front. So, like Adrian said, watching other people, how they interact with each other, how they greet each other, how they buy a bus ticket, whatever. That sounds like a very simple thing, but it can go really, really far and be very helpful to you. Okay. Uh, Say people share too much, they give too much detail, they're too flashy with their stuff. If you are a chatty person, pay attention to that when you travel alone and are getting comfortable with talking to strangers. I I am a person of very few words unless I know you and I like you. Then I will talk a lot, but I keep it close to the chest. Nobody needs to know my business um, when I'm out traveling. And part of that is about safety, and part of that is just everybody don't need to know my business. And I think part of it is being an introvert, we like to watch people and see how they navigate things and how they're moving before we move forward. I see y'all asking about the pink. We're taking a break. I wanted to see how gray my hair actually is, and it's very gray. And two, I think we might get a new color, but I wanted all of the pink gone before we chose a new color. So we'll see. We'll see what that is. Okay, so Malika said this. I didn't want to say it because I will come off sounding like I am just paranoid and suspicious of everybody. But I see other folks think this too. Pay extra attention to chatty strangers who are too friendly too soon. That's the key part. Because here's the thing, and this is not just when I travel. I'm like this in the US too. Because are you going to try and scam me? Is that why you're super chatty, super friendly? Are you going to try and steal my wallet? Like that's another reason why I like to keep my things physically on me where they are touching my body, so that if somebody's trying to pickpocket me, um, I hopefully can feel that. Okay, so we talked about slowing down when we travel. We talked about the benefits of solo travel. Here's the other thing. It is perfectly okay if when you are planning your solo travel, until you get as comfortable as you need to be, to start with a soft landing. You don't have to Your first solo trip doesn't have to be international. You don't have to go all the way to Bali. It can be domestic. There's nothing wrong with domestic travel. But also, you could do something soft, kind of like I did. You could buy into a group trip or a retreat, like the retreat I am hosting with Ivana Robinson next month in El Salvador, because I know there are some people who signed up to go on the retreat specifically because they wanted to visit El Salvador, and they were like, "Oh, this is a way I could do it without having to like navigate and do everything myself." I did this when I went to Cuba in November. I'd been to Cuba before, kind of solo, like getting there. I got there by myself, and I just remember um, how it was not an easy trip. So the thought of letting somebody else work out, all I had to do was show up and get there. I booked my flight. So there's nothing wrong with starting out with a soft landing. I don't want anybody thinking that they've got to go out and forge and blaze new paths, because you can totally baby steps. Now Stephanie Perry has me self-conscious about using the term baby steps, but baby steps are fine. There ain't nothing wrong with them. You can start out domestic solo travel. There are all kinds of places, and every safety tip we've given you tonight applies to domestic travel in the US, just like it would apply to travel internationally. Okay. Um, what else did I want to tell y'all? Oh, I guess I already in my notes where I was talking about, like act like you own it. Remember, you had to have that main character energy. Um, because this is your trip, this is your adventure, you are the main character of it. So, like, remember to borrow that. We talked about this a little bit before about planning for the unexpected. I think that that's where a lot of the fear and apprehension comes from is, well, what do I do if this thing happens? And the unknown part of that, I think, is what creates a lot of that feeling. So plan for it. The things that you are most worried about, create a plan, a backup plan for that. You probably won't ever have to use it, but maybe having that backup plan will give you some peace of mind. And yeah, LLO says it perfectly. Um, if you're really nervous about the language thing, go to places that speak English. Because the English empire was so ginormous, there are lots of countries you can go to where the official language or one of the official languages is English. So I guess that's kind of a good thing that came out of colonization. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah. Um, that definitely would fall under soft landing. And there's nothing, and here again, like we were talking about travel shaming and all of that, there is nothing wrong with starting with a country that speaks English. You don't have to throw in all of the variables from the beginning. And during your trip, give yourself grace. Check in with yourself each morning of your trip. Like, how am I feeling? Am I feeling stressed? Am I feeling anxious? Can you pinpoint the concern? Like, it's not your solo trip should not be something you have to endure and make your way through. It's supposed to be enjoyable. And so every day you may need to make tweaks and adjustments to your plans or your goals because of how you're feeling. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. Um, do you ever register with the US Embassy? Um, I used to be really good about this, um, but I have not registered with the STEP program. I used to be really good about this. Like when I went to Thailand, when I went to China the first time, when I first came to Mexico, I used to do it. Now, I think I do it more now if it's a country, like if I'm going off the beaten path more, I do it. But yeah, you should totally do that. There is another video on this channel about staying safe when you solo travel. What is the link to that? Um, how to stay safe solo traveling. That goes into some detail. So if you're a brand new solo traveler, I think you will find this video really helpful. And I will remember to add it to the description for those of you who are watching this in the future. Okay. Where is Auntie Trey? Okay, so I dropped the link to that video in the chat. Okay, Auntie Trey, this is a good question. What they gonna do for you? They're not gonna do a whole lot. Okay, let's be real. And let's be real about our expectations of what the State Department is going to do. Um, what they are okay. Step Works was in CDMX in Panama during the earthquake, hurricane. What they're going to do for you is you're going to get updates. You're going to get notifications. Okay, so that's one reason you do it. You don't register with STEP because you think if something pops off in that country, they're going to come find you, because they're not. It don't work like that. Um, Prime example, I was in China when the pandemic began. I didn't realize it at the time, but I lived about 2 hours by train from Wuhan. And so as they were locking down Wuhan, the State Department did an evacuation flight. Now, what people don't realize is that was the end of their responsibility. They were like, there is an evacuation flight. This is where it's leaving from. If you can get here, you can get on it. If you can pay the, was it $5,000, $10,000? I can't remember. Okay, so they know it. Basically, you register with STEP so that one, the U.S. government knows that you are there. It does not imply that they're going to do anything for you, but two, you get updates. You will know like what's going on. Those are the primary reasons you are to register with STEP. Okay, but don't think that they are going to come through and rescue you, because that is not what they do. That is not what. No, the flight isn't cheap. I know it was at least $5,000. They don't allow pets. And if you cannot pay, you have to sign basically a loan. They will loan you the money, and they void your passport until you pay them back. Okay. So it's not necessarily that they will check on you, but there will at least be some record within the US government that, hey, we know that you were there. So they will at least know, like, hey, we have X number of Americans in this country, but they're not going to do a whole lot for you because um, I remember there being a big question about whether or not they would even do the evacuation flight. Like there was a whole lot of discussion about that. Um, so like I still get because I can't figure out how to turn it off. I still get updates for China. I get them here in Mexico, like when the security situation changes significantly, they will send out an update. Yeah, when there are natural disasters, things like that. That's not a bad price. When you were in Antarctica, Argentina shut down, they were charging 2,500 to get back to the US from Buenos Aires. That's actually not a bad price. Yeah. So it's registering for STEP. Make sure that you have, and STEP actually has an app, and I talk about it in that video, Staying Safe. Do I talk about it in that video? Or it might be in the travel app video I did. I can't remember, y'all. That was more than a year ago. But STEP does have an app, um, that there are some few other resources that you get within the app, that sort of thing. So yeah. Okay. I think we have done it. I think we answered the questions. If you have a question that did not get answered, please drop it in the chat because I want to make sure we take care of you. Does the emergency evacuation coverage on travel insurance pay or reimburse that expense? Possibly. In a lot of insurance coverage, some of them will not cover, it depends on the, why you were being evacuated. If it is civil unrest, they may not cover it. You have to look at your specific policy. Um, I Unfortunately, I think in the wake of COVID, they have rewritten a lot of policies so that they don't get caught like they did then, because nobody ever contemplated something like that happening. So a lot of those insurance companies had to pay, like at one point, to get out of China, a economy fare ticket was running $10,000. I kid you not. It was actually more than the business class ticket. And because of, like, they hadn't had something like that happen, so they hadn't written that into the policies. They ended up having to cover a lot of those flights. I've noticed that the language has changed a lot. So if you've got to evacuate, you need to look at the policy to see, like, what are the things that they exclude. A lot of them will exclude war, civil unrest, terrorist acts. And I think now some of them are starting to exclude things like, oh, well, the government closed the borders. So you have to look at your specific policy, but they might be able to reimburse that. It just depends. And I am working on a travel insurance video, so we can talk about that. I think that's next week. I think that's next week, maybe. I think that's next week. Okay. Any other questions that you had about solo travel that we did not get to, because there is a big chunk of the chat that I missed because y'all were fast and furious up in there. Um, yeah. Okay. Step notifications came in handy. I was glamping with some Omanis in Muscat near the Syrian border, and there was some insurgent action popping off. Yeah. So I think step is great as long as you have your expectations in the right place. Okay. So again, if you've got a question that you wanted answered that we did not answer, it's not that I was trying to avoid it. I probably didn't see it. Um, the chat was moving fast tonight. All right. So again, like I said, we got a lot going on the channel this week. On Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern. I will be talking to Ebony, who moved to Zurich, Switzerland. Um, Thank you, F Doctor. Y'all know I am horrible about promoting things. There is a move abroad checklist that if you are going to travel long term, or if you're looking to move elsewhere, that checklist will come in handy. There is a link for it in the description. I believe there's also a link for the retreat, Reclaim the Retreat, March 15th through the 21st. There are still 2 spots left. This will be a much more intimate retreat than the one in November. This is also going to be cheaper than the one in November. So if you have been, El Salvador has been, in the back of your mind, you want to spend some time, build community with Black women, you should come to Reclaim the Retreat. So there's that. Thank y'all for helping me, because I am horrible at all of this. Uh, ah, Jupiter's Corner, Peace Corps. I interviewed 2 ladies who did the Peace Corps. They completely independent of the other. These are podcast episodes. One of them was Lisa, who joined the Peace Corps when she was 60 years old as part of her I want to retire abroad, but I don't have a lot of money. She was in Madagascar, and then Raven, who is significantly younger, joined the Peace Corps, who also happened to be in Madagascar, but completely independent. I didn't know that one knew the other or what have you, but I've interviewed 2 folks who were in the Peace Corps. And there is a playlist on the channel of all of the podcast episodes, and you can find those 2 there, Raven and Lisa. Um, Okay. All right. So yes, grab the checklist. It is in the description, and I don't see any other questions. So Friday, we are talking about Switzerland. And then on Sunday afternoon, it is all about Black women embracing joy. We are getting together to do some creative co-working. If there is a creative thing you want to do, but you haven't been able to find the time to do it, come hang out with us on Sunday afternoon. I have been putting sewing on Sundays on my calendar, but I haven't sat down to do it, and I'm going to change it this weekend. So if you color, you paint, you draw, you cook, you knit, you crochet, whatever it is, come hang out with us on Sunday. This is not the kind of co-working where like you work on work stuff and you're trying to be productive. Absolutely not. I think it is 5 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. It's really about what is an activity that brings you joy. And you maybe haven't been able to carve out time in your calendar to actually do that activity. That's what we're doing Sunday afternoon. So, a lot happening on the channel this week. So yeah, thank y'all for hanging out with me. I just realized we've been up here for more than 2 hours. If you are watching this and you are not subscribed to the channel, please do that. If you want to help me help other Black women, hit like on this video, because hopefully that will tell YouTube, hey, this is a good video and you should show it to some other people. And I hope to see some of y'all come hang out on Sunday, or join me on Friday when we talk to Ebony. All right. Bye, guys.